It's unique, it's funky, it's totally original. Today we're doing a review of Barrell Seagrass. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Hutch, and thanks so much for joining me on this journey through the world of whiskey. So first off, I just want to say to everybody out there, happy Bourbon Heritage Month. We're in September now, and I've actually been able to get my hands on a couple of really nice bottles lately that I am super excited to review and share with you guys. So we're going to kick that off with none other than Barrell Seagrass today. So this is a product from Barrell Craft Spirits. This is actually the first thing I've had from them. Never tasted anything else from Barrell, but by all accounts, they are a very well regarded craft distillery, and it was about time I checked something out from them. So a couple of interesting things about Barrell. First off, they do everything at cask strength. So every single one of their products is going to come out of the barrel and not be cut with water in any way, which is great. Second thing is that they are pretty premium in price. Most of their products are in that $80 to $100 range, which is one of the reasons I haven't yet explored much from them. But I had heard so many good things about this seagrass and so many people saying that it's basically such a unique experience that I felt like I had to try it out. And I saw it at a pretty good price, right around 75 bucks. So I went ahead and pulled the trigger on it. And then the last thing I would say about Barrell Craft Spirits is that it's part of their philosophy to do everything as well as they can in the moment and to create totally unique new products. So they've got a couple of lines that are a little bit more steady now, like the Dovetail and the Seagrass. But even these are very interesting and pretty innovative blends of different types of whiskey. So here we are today, and we're looking at arguably the most interesting and probably the most popular right now, and that's Seagrass. So let's take a look now at Barrell Seagrass itself and break down what's in this bottle. So first of all, it's rye whiskey, and it's finished in Martinique Rum, Madeira, and Apricot Brandy barrels. So 3 different finishes on this one unique blend. Martinique Rum, I believe that is a specific type of rum where they used pressed cane sugar instead of fermented cane sugar. I'm not that familiar with rum, but I think that's the slight difference there. Madeira is just a type of fortified wine, and Apricot Brandy barrels, which is kind of what caught my eye the most, and the most interesting here is brandy made from fermented apricots. And then on the back of the bottle, it tells you where the whiskey itself was distilled. So it says distilled in Kentucky, Indiana, Tennessee, and Canada. So Canadian rye in here. Indiana, most likely MGP. Anytime you see that, that's probably where it's coming from. And Tennessee, I've heard rumors that it's probably Dickel in here. So that is just a lot of flavors and different profiles coming together with 3 different finishes in one barrel. Like I said, it's cask strength, and this version of it is 119.3 proof. So all that being said, there's nothing left to do but just kind of dive in here and see what it tastes like. Before we do that, do just want to say, first of all, that I am so thrilled that we are now over 500 subscribers, blown away by that number. And you guys are so awesome with all your support of the channel. We are trying to get to 1,000 by the end of the year. So if you could subscribe if you haven't already, that would be great. Like the video, comment below if you've had Seagrass and what your experience has been so far. All right, everybody, let's just dive into the nose, palate, and finish now. So Barrell Seagrass on the nose. Yeah, it's so sugary. Like strawberry Jolly Rancher kind of thing going on. Hard candiness, a little bit of like a tropical pineapple kind of thing going on too. But then underneath and sort of enveloping it all is this really nice rye spice and rye grain presence. A little bit of that apricot coming through too. But it's so candy sugar forward. And then underneath it's balanced out by that like rye spice. So I think the nose is spectacular here. I mean, it's so interesting. It's different than anything else I've ever smelled on a whiskey. But I think really the backbone being that rye and that rye spice saves it from going too sugary sweet and being almost sickly sweet. So I'm really enjoying it. I dig it. Let's get into the first sip now and see how that all transfers over to the palate. Cheers, everybody. Whew. Okay, wow. So that is spicy. I'm gonna say that first, especially like the back half of the experience there. And the finish, I mean, I'm getting a nice warm Kentucky hug, and the rye spice blooms and really takes over the sip. And that was my first sip of whiskey for the day, by the way, so the spice might be hitting me a little extra hard. But before that, I got some really nice like apple cider kind of experience there. There's a little bit of astringency underneath all of the sweetness, so that's where I'm getting sort of the cider, maybe even like apple vinegar kind of note. But then there's a really nice like sugary coating of the mouth going on as well. Maybe a touch of the apricot, but I got a lot of apple on that, to be honest with you, apple and pear. So I feel like the core of it for me was this apple pear, apple cider kind of experience with this blooming rye spice by the end of it. Maybe a little bit of apricot in there, and I'll be interested to see how it keeps developing on the palate if more of that like tropical stuff comes out. So let's go back in for a second sip now. Cheers, everybody. Okay, so relatively similar experience there. I will say on the front, I thought I got a little bit more of a pineapple note there, so something a little bit more tropical, which I've had a couple of pours of this now, and that's something I noticed. But again, more of that apple and pear and bright, juicy red and green fruits coming together in the center of it. Transitioning, this time I got a little bit like a brown sugar note and rye spice. I mean, that rye spice, it just totally envelops the palate about 2/3 of the way through the sip, and the finish is so much of that spice and a little bit of that sugary sweetness sticking around. I'm gonna go back in now for a third sip here and just evaluate that finish fully for you guys and how long that lasts and what flavors I can pick up here. Let's visit the nose one more time though. Yeah, so I'm starting to get a little bit more of a brown sugar molasses thing happening underneath as it opens up a little bit. So it gets both fruit sweet as it opens up and a little bit of like a brown sugar sweetness for me, which is really nice. And then there's just this tingling, effervescent rye spice throughout it all. Really nice. Going in for the third sip and the finish here. Cheers, everybody. Okay, yeah. First of all, mouthfeel, very, very solid here. Finish, long. It's just a long finish, like there's no other way to break it down. The spice sticks around for a really long time. The apple, pear, and particularly like a pear, maybe even apricot kind of note sticks around, wrapped around that spice. But man, I gotta give a big thumbs up to the rye spice that lingers. It's not unpleasant, it's just warm and effervescent, you know, this like Pop Rocks kind of cola kind of punchiness to it, which is really nice. And overall, I would say the finish is just really, really good. You almost don't have to take a sip for a little while because you can just sort of let it linger and really experience that spice, the fullness of its run through of that spice. One thing I will say about the whole experience for me, every sip, and I've had a couple pours, so I noticed this throughout, is that the sugary Jolly Rancher pear kind of sweetness is almost too much for me. Like almost, it's right on the border. But then that rye spice kicks in and really floods the palate, and it kind of saves the day in a way. And so for me, especially the first 2 pours or so I had of it, I was like, oh, this might be too sweet, might be too tropical. I might be only able to have this in the tiniest little quantities because it's gonna be too much sweetness. But I feel like the rye spice has really started to bloom, and now it's just surprisingly well balanced. Like it knows exactly when to rip you back from the sweetness and bring spice punching in, which, I mean, I gotta appreciate that for sure. Okay, so final thoughts here on Barrell Seagrass. First of all, 100% Hutchworthy, such an interesting bottle of whiskey, and I think it's definitely worth that $75 to $85 price. For $100, I'd hesitate on it for sure. Other than that, I gotta say, I mean, super unique and interesting, really cool tropical apricot, pear, apple sweetness, fruity, but also a heck of a lot of rye spice, and comes in right at the right time. I would say that if you are a rye drinker, this is a no-brainer. Go pick it up and try it. If you are more of a bourbon person and are hesitant around rye spice and things like that, I still think it's worth it because the sweetness is so powerful and it's well balanced, even though there's so much going on here. All right, everybody, I think that's gonna wrap it up today on this really original bottle, Barrell Seagrass. Until I see you guys again for another video, all I can say is keep drinking good whiskey, keep trying new things, and cheers.